Shuttle Atlantis and the Russian space station Mir are swapping some cargo. Earlier, the astronauts and cosmonauts exchanged gifts. They've also joined two halves of a medallion marking Thursday's linking of the two orbiting crafts. From down here on Earth, Russian Prime Minister Viktor Chernomyrdin and visiting U.S. Vice President Al Gore called from Moscow to congratulate the space crews on the successful docking. Well, Vice President Al Gore is in Russia to try to iron out differences between the two nations.
Und Mir gab es die erste Panne. Ein Hauptcomputer fiel aus. Die Experimente konnten aber planmäßig beginnen. Zuvor hatten die amerikanische und russische Besatzung Geschenke ausgetauscht.
Die Besatzungen der russischen Raumstation Mir und der US-Raumfähre Atlantis haben heute Geschenke ausgetauscht. Vor den Fahnen Russlands und der USA wechselten Blumensträuße, eigens angefertigte Uhren und Gedenkplaketten die Besitzer. Dann begann für die insgesamt 10-köpfige Besatzung der zusammengekoppelten Raumschiffe der Alltag. Während des gemeinsamen Fluges sind bis Dienstag 15 Experimente geplant, mit denen die Reaktion des Körpers auf die Schwerelosigkeit untersucht werden soll.
Crews aboard the Shuttle Atlantis and the Mir spacecraft began their day exchanging gifts of flowers, chocolate, bread, medals, and pins. The astronauts and cosmonauts received a joint phone call from the Russian Prime Minister Viktor Chernomyrdin and the Vice President Al Gore, who is in Moscow. Gore congratulated the Atlantis commander, Robert Hoop Gibson.
Hey, Hoot, this is Vice President Al Gore. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Mr. Vice President. Good morning.
Well, good morning to you. Viktor Stepanovich Chernomyrdin and I are here seeing you right in front of us on the wide screen, and we want to say congratulations on the historic success. You made that approach look so easy that I think you're now the envy of aviators around the world.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. It's a real pleasure to be here with you this morning, and we're very honored to have the opportunity to say hello to you. I had an awfully good crew on board Atlantis, and there's an awfully good crew over here aboard the Mir, and together we managed to make this all work. If I made it look easy, it's because of the great help that I had on board and the systems that we had and the way Atlantis really held together for this. So we had a very good day yesterday.
Well, the first international docking mission was 20 years ago. We talk with the U.S. commander of that mission when World News from Washington returns. Well, the world may watch in wonderment as events unfold so far above. The sight of Russian and American crews at work and play in the Mir space station is a far cry from the "we will bury you" blusters of Khrushchev and the Cold War iciness of a line of U.S. presidents stretching back to Truman. One group watches the Mir with a special appreciation and understanding. That handful of astronauts and cosmonauts who preceded Mir in orbital detente. One of those people is Thomas Stafford, retired Lieutenant General of the U.S. Air Force, commander of the U.S. side of that 1975 Apollo-Soyuz mission.
There was a lot riding on it. It was very visible to the whole world. It was a high point of detente. We trained on it. And I came in to dock and flying it and knew everything had to go right. And I was calling off the distances in Russian as I was judging them by eyeball. And Leonov was answering in English, and we got a contact and a capture, and then we retracted the mechanism right on time. So it's always wonderful when you've trained so long and so hard and get to be able to do the job.
What was the toughest thing of the training? Was it learning another language, or was it learning to think in the metric system?
Well, I think the main thing, that was my fourth mission, and was the Russian language with my Oklahoma accent. You know, we spoke Russian to them, they spoke English to us. And really my counterpart, Leonov, says, oh, we speak 3 languages. We speak English, Russian, and Oklahoman, so.
Well, there was always a little kind of a twang in all of NASA anyway at that time, you know. Everybody understood Oklahoman pretty well. The understanding in those days was tougher to come by, though, wasn't it? These countries, it wasn't Russia and the United States, it was the entire Soviet Union, and really the Western world involved in that.
That's right. The difference is so dramatic because everything there was a secret. Everything was a state secret, including, wheat production, oil production. And they wouldn't tell us where the spacecraft was built. Finally, we had to say, we insist we go to the control center and have a representative there. But it was really in the height of the Cold War. But yet it showed in the height of the Cold War, if you have a common goal between two countries with different languages, different units of measurement, different politics, you can achieve that common goal. And that was the main thing on Apollo-Soyuz.
Astronauts in those days all came out of a military background, as did you.
Right.
Didn't that make it a little tougher? Here you are flying and shaking hands with and meeting men that you have been trained to kill.
Well, the one thing that made it good was the fact that most of them were professional. They were Soviet fighter pilots, Soviet test pilots. So you had a background as a fighter pilot and a test pilot. So it was a common bond that way as far as professionalism. As far as philosophy, sure, you'd been trained to kill them.
All right, now let's get to Hoot Gibson's differential task of putting a space shuttle up into a docking mechanism on the Mir. Look, the mechanism, to come together, the pedals all look pretty much like yours.
Well, you're absolutely right. The mechanism is basically the Apollo-Soyuz mechanism. They've taken the pedals from the outside and put them on the inside, but the damping mechanism, the retract mechanism, and the latch is basically the same.
He had a lot going for him in terms of computation. He had to kind of fly it by eye, but there was a lot of backup in there, wasn't there?
Well, Hoot had a laser that was handheld, to give him down to a thousandth of an inch and the rate of it. And when we flew, when we got in close, it was just like the fly formation of a fighter plane. It was a Mark I eyeball. I called out the distances to Leonov in Russian, but it was myself judging. I had to come in faster, and he did too, because our masses were lots less. So I wanted to make sure I got a capture and didn't bounce the Soyuz off.
Contact. All right, those were big 100-ton behemoths up there in orbit,
right.
Mir and the shuttle.
Right, those are 100 tons plus each. And the Apollo I flew was about 17 tons, and the Soyuz was around 6.5 tons.
A little Soyuz, it's been modified some, but it's still workhorse, isn't it? It's still the vehicle that gets people up and back, and materiel.
It gets them up there very frequently, reliably, and with very cost-effective. Now, it doesn't have the big volume that the shuttle has or all the payload bay, but it's been a real workhorse for them for 30 years.
When you see 8 people in one spacecraft, men, women, gender, different backgrounds, engineers, scientists, and some people who are from a variety of calls, that tells you something, doesn't it?
That tells me we've really come a long ways from where we were, because it was all male crew in the past, as you know, on Apollo and what the Soyuz had. But here we have different countries coming together and just working like that, men, women. But that's really the forecast for the future, too. And I think a lot of the international efforts will go and be focused on exploration of space.
I have to ask you, we haven't mentioned Vance Brand is there, Deke Slayton's gone. That's a marker of our time, I guess, that not everybody could have stayed for this.
Well, it's real sad. Deke was such a wonderful person, and we are going to have the reunion of Apollo-Soyuz here in Washington and in Houston in just a couple of weeks. It's the 20th anniversary. Leonov and Kubasov will be here, Vance Brand will be here, and then we're going to Houston and meet with so many of the people that helped support the mission.
A lot of memories in that.
Oh, there sure are. I lived in the Soviet Union there for 6 periods of time in 2.5 years before the mission, and of course the cosmonauts were in Houston for 5 periods of time.
Is there some commonality between folks over in, say, Gorky or Star City and Ponca, Oklahoma?
Oh, certainly the backgrounds. I've been to Kubasov's hometown. He's been to my hometown out in Weatherford, Oklahoma, and so has Leonov. In fact, they have a museum out there where my artifacts are, and they've been to Oklahoma City. So when you go back to their hometowns, they're just like us, every one of them.
Our thanks for that to Lieutenant General Thomas Stafford, U.S. Air Force, retired. He was the commander of the Apollo-Soyuz mission for the United States side in 1975. He's co-founder of the technical consulting firm of Stafford, Burke, and Hecker in Alexandria, Virginia. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
We'll have the details from up there next. And later, well, spend an eon in space, and what do you get? Presents, telephone calls from VIPs, and an unusually thorough physical. CNN's John Holloman has that and the rest of the latest activities aboard the Mir Atlantis complex.
This is payback day for astronaut Norm Thagard and his two Russian cosmonaut colleagues. They've been in space more than 109 days, and their bodies have changed. They'll be tested in the Shuttle Space Lab, which has been turned into a high-tech doctor's office. The astronauts started their day by exchanging gifts with their colleagues aboard Mir and being congratulated by Russian and U.S. officials who are meeting in Moscow to discuss future science cooperation. Some of the gifts are what you'd expect: salt and bread from the Mir crew, flowers, fresh fruit, and chocolate from the shuttle crew. But there were also some unusual gifts. There's a guitar aboard Mir. Shuttle Commander Hoot Gibson, member of an astronaut band, brought 2 sets of strings for that guitar. The major event for the rest of the day will be transfer of supplies from the shuttle to Mir and the beginning of medical tests on Thagard and his 2 long-term space colleagues. Astronauts Ellen Baker and Bonnie Dunbar will be doing the medical testing. Dunbar says all the changes that happen in space and will be studied on this mission have practical value to sick people on Earth.
It just so happens that these changes are of immense interest to other physicians and other researchers in the country, because some of the changes relate to problems we have on the ground, vestibular problems, osteoporosis, and so forth. So for 30 years we've teamed together with these people to use our best minds to, first of all, understand the problems and then to solve them. Norm will have been up over 90 days.
The 2 spaceships will remain together until July 4th. From what we've been told, the undocking may be just as amazing to watch as the docking. The shuttle will fly around the Mir, while a camera in a 3rd spaceship, now connected to Mir, takes pictures of the whole thing. John Holloman, CNN reporting.
Well, a program note, CNN International will interview all 10 crew members live during the weekend, starting at 14:45 GMT Saturday.
Perhaps it's a silly tradition, but that's what your colleagues on the ground do when they wake you up in space. This time, the wake-up music is Russian. The Russian space station Mir and the U.S. Space Shuttle Atlantis are locked in an orbital embrace circling the globe. The crew of 6 Americans and 4 Russians is the largest in space history. Over the next days, they'll transfer cargo between the shuttle and space station and conduct scientific and medical tests. We will be talking to the crew here live on CNN International within the hour. And just in case they fell back to sleep, another wake-up call for astronauts and cosmonauts in space. Ground controllers woke up the combined American and Russian crew just hours ago. The Russian space station Mir and the U.S. Shuttle Atlantis are locked in an orbital embrace circling the globe. The 10-person crew is the largest in space history. Over the next days, crew members will transfer cargo between the shuttle and space station, and they'll conduct scientific and medical tests. And we will be talking to the crew live here on CNN International within the next few minutes.
This is a special report from CNN. I'm John Holloman at CNN Center in Atlanta. We're about to go up about 217 miles above the surface of the Earth to the core module of the Mir space station, where the 10 shuttle and Mir astronauts and cosmonauts are waiting to spend about 15 minutes with us. We have to share our time with somebody else, so we have to use the 15 minutes as effectively as we can. I'm going to start with Commander Hoot Gibson, who's just had a new baby daughter, Emily. As I told you a second ago, Hoot, it's nice to have new children. How would you, when Emily gets to be 8 years old, explain what happened on this mission to her?
hearing all about it, so by the time she's 8 years old, she's probably going to be tired of hearing about it. But I guess I'll tell her and grandchildren that it was perhaps the proudest moment of my life to be able to take part in an event such as this, and an event the likes of which we haven't tried to do, haven't dreamed of for over 20 years now. It's certainly been the piloting challenge of my career and the flight operations challenge of my entire career to get to take part in an event like this, and I'm really proud of the crew that I got to go up with and the folks on the ground that helped put it all together, and I guess I'll try and convey all of that to little Emily as she gets bigger.
Yeah. How tough a job has it been, really? You said it was the piloting challenge of your career. Tell me how it was during the docking, in the last few seconds of that, and tell me if you had time to listen or feel the two ships coming together. We got a fax in from a viewer in Russia who wants to know the sensations that you felt and heard and sensed as you were completing the docking.
John, I'll tell you what we felt from over on the shuttle side, and make sure you ask the Russian crew, the Mir-18 crew, what they felt, because I think they noticed more at the actual moment of docking than we did. The most demanding part of the whole rendezvous, I felt, was when we intercepted the alignment cone that we needed to fly up in and stay within that alignment cone. There was a fair amount of maneuvering and a fair amount of thrusting that we had to do with the Orbital Atlantis to get it established and safely within that corridor and keep it there. Once we had it there, it was a lot easier to keep it in the corridor than I thought it was going to be, and we were able to fly a pretty accurate approach all the way up. And the closer we got, the more I was able to determine that we were going to be able to fly it very accurately and precisely, and so it went very smoothly from that point on.
Yeah. Why don't you pass the mic to...
At the moment of contact, we didn't feel the docking mechanism capture or the actual contact when we first contacted the Mir. We fire a number of thrusters for about 3 seconds straight, so of course we heard the thrusters and felt the thrusters firing. But in terms of actual thump or actual contact, it was a little bit of a letdown, although the word letdown really doesn't fit here, but there wasn't a bang or any kind of a clunk that we could hear other than the thrusters firing.
Yeah, why don't you pass the microphone over to Norm, and I'll ask him the same thing, and then he can pass the mic to Vladimir, who was over there as well. Norm, it's interesting to me. We've asked our viewers around the world to fax in questions. They all want to know what it feels like, what it smells like, a lot more than, you know, the scientific things that are going on there. Tell me, from your position on board Mir, what it felt like when Hoot piloted the shuttle into the side of your space station.
Well, John, I've got some good comparisons. I've been here when we had a Progress resupply ship dock, and when that occurred, I was probably a foot away from the node where it impacted. I felt nothing, I heard nothing. When the Spectre module docked with the station, that's about 20 tons, we felt a very slight vibration, but really felt nothing. When the shuttle docked, we felt it. The 100 tons hitting the station had some impact on us, and it was pretty impressive given the mild sensations with the previous vehicles.
Yeah, okay, this is a question for Vladimir, then I'm going to come back to Norm just to let you know where we're going here. Vladimir, you had never spent time on board a space station with Americans before. Was it much different, and was it much different with Dr. Norm Thagard there doing all these sophisticated medical tests on you the whole time you were together?
Это вопрос Владимиру. По нашему понятию, вы никогда не были раньше на космической станции с американцем. Были ли какие-нибудь разницы? Отличалось как-то быть там с американцем Норм Таггартом?
Нет, никаких проблем.
No, there weren't any problems. We had a common language even when we were on Earth, so we worked together very well and implemented the program jointly. We didn't really feel any difference that there was an American on board or you know, that he was any other nationality. So there were never any serious problems or misunderstandings.
Now, back to Norm Thagard for a minute. How much of a problem has it been for you, Norm, to be weightless for so long? And what sorts of things have you done that our viewers who follow the space program might not know that you might have done special this time to counteract the effects of weightlessness on your body?
The Russians have had folks up for long-duration space flights, so they have a number of recommendations, and I tried to follow most, if not all of them. We wear some devices around our upper thighs that are supposed to help with the problem of fluid redistribution after return to Earth. We exercise 2 times a day, and I actually, for many days, exercised a full hour, and that's actual time, either turning on a bicycle or running on a treadmill or walking on a treadmill. And in addition to that, they also use a device that folks may not be familiar with called a lower body negative pressure device. We've used it many times in the past to evaluate the status of the heart in zero-G. The Russians actually use it for training, thinking that it helps people with, again, the problem of orthostatic hypotension, medical term, but in practical terms, that means when you stand up, the tendency to feel like you're going to pass out and fall over. And what that does is you get inside a device that completely encloses the lower half of your body. A differential pressure is created and actually sucks the blood into the legs to create the same sort of distribution of blood in zero-G that the normal person would have standing in 1G. I've done all those things, and I hope it helps, and I guess I'll find out in about a week.
Yeah, you expected to be in space about 90 days. You've been up nearly 4 months now. How much of a hardship has that been for you and for your family on a personal level?
I miss my family a lot. I've depended on them for support, and I've gotten it through the years. It's tough to be away from home. I spent a year in Vietnam. I guess I spent nearly 4 months here. It's something that you feel you have to do, but you also realize you're making sacrifices when you do it, and they sacrifice too. And I feel badly sometimes that I get to have all this fun, so to some extent the sacrifice is worth it. They don't get that benefit. Well, I'm going to come home and probably stay home a little longer this time, and I miss them, and I look forward to seeing them.
Take a couple of comp days. Why don't you do that? That's what I'm going to do at the end of this mission as well. This is a question for Ellen Baker. I know you've just started your medical tests on Norm and the 2 long-duration cosmonauts. Any surprises in the first few hours of tests that you've performed?
Not really. We're running some fairly routine tests, but they are on folks who've been in a fairly unroutine environment, and really there are no surprises. And I will say that some of the tests that we're doing on board the shuttle are the same tests that Norm and Valoja and Gennady have been doing on board the Mir, though less frequently over the last 3.5 months.
Okay. Question for Greg Harbaugh. Yeah, I've been listening to you talk on the two-way radio air-to-ground this morning about a lot of different things that have been going on up there, including this problem with the alarms that wake everybody up in the middle of the night. Are those problems a big deal or just a minor inconvenience for you?
I think they're a minor inconvenience, John, and my only comment that you may have overheard this morning was we had a computer fail the other day, and I was in a little bit of discussion with the folks on the ground wanting to make sure that since we recovered that computer and we're now using it again, that they had full confidence in it to ensure that it would stay up overnight so that we wouldn't have to be awake in the night sleep shift. And they're analyzing that today, and we'll have another discussion about it before we go to bed tonight, but if they think it's good enough, that's good enough for me.
Yeah.
And it's not a problem in any case. If we wake up, we have to deal with something, we can do that, and we do it quickly, and then we turn around and go right back to sleep, so it's no big deal.
Greg, you and the flight deck crew just completed a series of leak tests on the tunnel where you fired the thrusters to see if this thing was going to break apart or spring a leak while you were doing some thruster firings. How'd that go?
I thought it went great. Everything looked super. You could tell there was something going on. It looked like there was a very small amount of deflection at the tips of the solar rays on Spectre, which we were watching very closely. But in terms of structural integrity, it looked great. As far as we can tell so far, the hatch interface is very tight. No problems.
Question for Bonnie Dunbar. Bonnie, you and I have talked for a long time about your desire to spend a long time in weightlessness. You've now spent a couple of days with Norm, who is in the middle of spending a long time in weightlessness. Has anything that he has told you in the past couple of days convinced you that you don't want to do that anymore, or you still want to go and stay for a while?
No, nothing he has said has convinced me not to do it. I'm in this business because I enjoy the work, and I think that we're contributing a lot to it, and I just happen to do well in a weightless environment, and, you know, if the opportunity should arise, I'd do it in a heartbeat, and hopefully a lot more people have that opportunity in the future.
Well, Bonnie, what's been your impression of the three men who have been there for a long period of time? Have you seen anything that surprised you about the way they are reacting now that they've been together with you for the first time in a long time?
Well, I think we're all happy to see them. They all look great, all doing well, and, you know, it's going to be the subtleties of our physiological investigations that show whether or not there are any changes, although we know, of course, there are going to be some, but this is going to be a good quantitative measurement of those changes and those trends. But they all look great.
Yeah, this is a question for one of the two doctors on board, maybe Norm, and if he gives a prejudiced answer, pass the microphone to Ellen. It's from a viewer in Greece who wants to know if people who are in space for a long time, whose bodies change, ever get mental changes. Mental illness was the thing that he mentioned to me in his facts. He said, do any of the people who stay in space for a long time get mentally different? And if so, are those effects offset when they get back to Earth?
Well, everybody around me says I was just as crazy before I flew as they find me now, so I guess I had no changes. I think from a psychological standpoint, there are some things to pay attention to in long-duration spaceflight. There are some things that you have to protect against, and I was real amazed to see Dr. Polyarkov, who'd been here over 14 months when I arrived, because he appeared to be perfectly normal. But I wonder if somebody can be perfectly normal if they'll spend 14 and a half months on a space station orbiting the Earth. But in general, no. I'd have to say people don't change mentally, but again, you have to pay attention to some psychological aspects of long-duration spaceflight.
This is a question from a dentist's convention in Rome, Italy. What do you do if you get a toothache or you get a cavity?
Well, we do carry medical kits on board, and in fact, we do have a training session with a dentist prior to coming up here, so we learn how to deal with those sorts of things. But we have some temporary fixes to toothaches and tooth pain, and some of the injections you might get if you go to the dentist and he has to pull a tooth or something like that. And so we're equipped to handle minor emergencies, nothing major, though.
This question for Nick Budarin is the rookie in the Atlantis crew. You've been there for about a week now. What do you miss most about the planet Earth?
Это вопрос господину Бударину. Вы уже на космосе находитесь на космосе примерно неделю уже. О чем вы скучаете на Земле? Well, to tell you the truth, I don't have an opportunity to miss anything. There's a lot of work. We have a period of changing the guard, as it were, and a lot of things to do after the shuttle leaves. We will immediately prepare our spacesuits for an EVA in the middle of July. So we're not going to have too much. I'm not going to have too much time to miss anything.
Well, Atlantis Mir crew, thank you very much for taking this quarter hour of your time to be with us here on CNN International today. It's good to see you all. You look remarkably good considering what you're doing, and congratulations. Houston, this is CNN. That concludes the event from CNN. And for our viewers around the world, thank you for joining us today here on Cable News Network International. Riding bicycles in the space lab and undergoing intensive medical examination. That's been the major scientific mission aboard Shuttle Atlantis and Space Station Mir so far this weekend. Commander Hoot Gibson says when his ship docked with Mir last week, he didn't feel much. But aboard the Russian ship, Norm Thagard had a different impression.
When the shuttle docked, we felt it. The 100 tons hitting the station had some impact on us, and it was pretty impressive given the mild sensations with the previous vehicles.
Thagard told CNN he had hoped to be home by this time, but delays in the shuttle and the Russian space program are keeping him aloft an extra month.
I miss my family a lot. I've depended on them for support, and I've gotten it through the years. It's tough to be away from home. I spent a year in Vietnam. I guess I spent nearly 4 months here. It's something that you feel you have to do.
Commander Hoot Gibson has found his place in history.
That it was perhaps the proudest moment of my life to be able to take part in an event such as this, and an event the likes of which we haven't tried to do, haven't dreamed of for over 20 years now. It's certainly been the piloting challenge of my career.
The Russian commander of the space station says having an American aboard for more than 100 days really didn't have a downside.
No, there weren't any problems. We had a common language even when we were on Earth, so we worked together very well.
Political leaders in both countries say if you're looking for a legacy of the first extended duration spaceflight by Americans and Russians, those words, no problems, would fit the bill. John Holloman, CNN reporting.
Science and Technology Week, high-flying history. U.S. astronauts and Russian cosmonauts connect their spacecraft and their country's space programs. Hello and welcome. I'm Miles O'Brien, reporting this week from the Johnson Space Center in Houston. Weighing in at about 500,000 pounds, the largest spacecraft ever to circle the planet is hurtling 250 miles above us this weekend. Actually, it's two spacecraft, the Russian space station Mir and the U.S. space shuttle Atlantis. The two ships made history on Thursday when they docked in orbit. 41 hours after the orbital chase began, the space shuttle Atlantis crept slowly but surely toward its rendezvous with spacefaring history.
Houston Atlantis, 30-foot check.
Just as he did hundreds of times in NASA simulators, Atlantis Commander Hoot Gibson flew a nearly flawless approach to the Russian space station Mir. The Russian-built docking ring proved up to the task, and the two vehicles became one, creating the largest satellite ever to orbit the Earth.
Houston Atlantis, we have capture.
It was perfect. It was really perfect. And it was not an easy job to do.
This is a dawn of a new era. It truly is.
Gibson earned the honor of opening the hatch.
A lot easier without gravity.
And shaking hands with Mir 18 Commander Vladimir Dezhirov.
You guys are upside down.
Whichever way you looked at it, the meeting of 4 cosmonauts and 6 astronauts in Mir's main core was a time for bear hugs and broad smiles. Looking and acting like excited tourists, the group posed for pictures and savored the moment.
After all the training and the preparation, it seems hard to believe that we're actually there, but indeed we are.
Astronauts and cosmonauts exchanged gifts as the Mir Atlantis crew continued the docked portion of this mission. They will be there for nearly 5 days, exchanging equipment and people. The shuttle delivered a replacement crew to Mir and will return with the space station's current occupants. Among them, U.S. astronaut Norm Thagard, who has been aboard Mir since mid-March.
I must say I've got mixed emotions. On the one hand, you want to come home, and on the other hand, you think, well, I'd like to do this for just a little while longer.
It is the first of 7 shuttle dockings with Mir, the first phase of U.S. and Russian efforts to build an international space station.
This was one of our first steps. This is still very, very much in the beginning. The fact that we've been successful gives me a great feeling of excitement and elation.
20 years ago, when Russian and American spacecraft last docked in orbit, there was a lot of talk just like that. This time around, the politics and the economics have changed. If both partners seem more committed to exploring space together, it's because they have to be. Atlantis and Mir are slated to undock on July 4th. Atlantis is scheduled to return to Earth on July 7th. Meantime, the space station, which is the ultimate object of this far-flung endeavor, is starting to take shape. But that has done little to quiet its critics. In fact, as the work heats up, so too does the debate. It is no longer simply a paper project. A dozen years and nearly as many revisions later, NASA is finally hammering out the final draft of its orbiting space station.
The way I see it, this is the greatest technological project ever attempted.
Boeing engineer Jim Waterman oversees construction of the station at NASA's Marshall Space Flight Center in Huntsville, Alabama. His team has already bent, built, and burnished more than 30,000 pounds of flight hardware.
This is Node 1.
Node 1 is the first U.S.-built component of the International Space Station. NASA hopes to launch it in December of 1997. It is the first to fly for good reason.
The node is like a connector block. I equate it to a little wooden block in the Tinker Toy set where you plug in sticks. So this is the little wooden block. That's where all the modules will connect on the International Space Station.
The U.S. and Russian space agencies plan to spearhead construction and assembly of this million-pound orbiting Tinker Toy. They are joined by the Japanese, Europeans, and Canadians, all planning to build their own components and laboratories. NASA estimates it will take 34 launches, at least 20 of them shuttle missions, to get all the building supplies and Astro workers to this far-flung construction site.
Putting a man on the moon was easy. Making this all fit together for the first time in space is a very, very complex operation.
NASA and Boeing are sorting through the engineering complexities by logging lots of hours working on space station mock-ups in tanks which simulate weightlessness. And they are relying heavily on computer-aided design to try and ensure all the pieces will fit together.
We can simulate the integration activity of the station. We can simulate the assembly of the station, all before the hardware hits the factory floor. And more importantly, before the hardware hits orbit, where it really has to work.
Yeah, this is the space lab now. When it's done, NASA hopes it will look something like this.
You can rotate it down.
The U.S. laboratory and habitation modules will be equipped with standardized racks to make construction and maintenance simpler. The size of two 747 airliners, the space station is designed to support 6 people, but it won't be a pleasure cruise. Showers?
Showers. 1.5 gallons of water every other day, whether you need it or not.
But for all the hard work, flight hardware, and fancy mock-ups, the International Space Station faces one challenge which is perhaps more daunting than the technical complexities. That's footing the bill. The U.S. portion of that bill is now estimated at $17 billion. That's NASA's figure. A recent report to Congress from the General Accounting Office puts the total U.S. price tag for building, then running the station for 10 years at $94 billion.
We're spending $93.9 billion for an orbiting white elephant.
Republican Congressman Dick Zimmer is an outspoken opponent of the space station.
That's going to bust the budget, and it's going to ruin the rest of the space program, including many more cost-effective programs that are currently planned by NASA and some that have already been abandoned by NASA.
NASA says the GAO estimate is inflated because it includes the cost of flying the space shuttle, money which would be spent anyway. Besides, NASA Administrator Daniel Golden is not willing to back out of this unprecedented partnership.
America's word has got to stand for something, and the space station is the heart and soul of our space program. There is no compromise on that issue.
So if the space station is canceled, where would that leave NASA and its new partners?
What's at stake here is basically the future of the American, Russian, and human spaceflight programs. The challenge is so great that we're either going to meet it together or we're not going to be able to meet it at all.
NASA sees the space station as a scientific platform, a focal point for international cooperation, and a stepping stone to Mars. So far, the steps toward those goals have been sure-footed, but down the road, many hurdles remain. In the next month, the space station faces a key vote in Congress. The success of the Atlantis Mir docking mission should help NASA's lobbying efforts.
Roger that, Houston. We are go for launch.
It wasn't quite as complicated as a space shot like Apollo 13, but in a Manhattan loft linked to the world through computers, all systems were go.
A live interactive simulcast with Tom Hanks and Ron Howard.
The online conference is growing in popularity as a movie marketing device. What made this event unique is that subscribers to 2 competing online services, CompuServe and America Online, could access it, as well as anyone finding the worldwide website called Universal Cyberwalk.
Hey, we've got a problem here.
For Tom Hanks, the problem was having to speak slowly while others typed his answers onto the internet.
Just give me a keyboard. It could be a dummy keyboard.
One dummy keyboard coming up.
Actually, quite expert at. This is the only way I can do this. What can be great about this is it can be kind of a bona fide discourse on cinema. because so much of what we end up doing is kind of like just personality puff piece, or it's a bit of a, you know, a frothy piece of show business pizzazz. And if here we actually get to, you know, talk about our movie and how we made it and what its repercussions are, those are always much better ways than to spend our time.
Once Howard and Hanks fell into the rhythm of the online conference, they found an unexpected advantage, according to their host.
On the one hand, you know, it is slower, and that does present some problems. On the other, even they were mentioning tonight that it gives you a chance to think about the answer to your question.
SWIG.
The technical nature of the subject matter of the movie Apollo 13 certainly lends itself to this sort of computer news conference. However, back in 1970, when NASA was sending spacecraft to the moon and back, computers were light years away from what they've evolved into today.
The computer on board the Apollo 13 spacecraft had like a fraction of the memory of your standard laptop computer that's out now. So it's interesting that we made this movie about flying to the moon, and it's a period piece.
After an hour in cyberspace, mission accomplished. But there's one more step: to leave an autograph on the wall, a decidedly low-tech form of communication. Mark Shearer, CNN Entertainment News, New York.
Aufregende Minuten. Nach 20 Jahren Funkstille trifft sich amerikanische und russische Hightech im All zu Forschungszwecken. Ziel des Andockmanövers ist die Ablösung der Besatzung von Mir. Die zwei Russen und der Amerikaner halten sich seit 3,5 Monaten in der Schwerelosigkeit auf. Belastungstests während der letzten 4 Tage sollten zeigen, wie das menschliche Gefäßsystem auf den langen Raumaufenthalt reagiert. Auf die Frage, wie sie sich fühlen, hieß es, wie überdimensionale Versuchskaninchen.
Cosmonauts and astronauts prepare to head back home. CNN's John Holliman has been monitoring the mission, covering it, and he has our story.
You come back and we get to see you again.
The astronauts and cosmonauts have done all the work they have to do together and have officially said goodbye. But now they're preparing for what may be the most exciting part of this mission visually, the undocking of the Shuttle Atlantis from Space Station Mir. Shuttle Commander Hoot Gibson says what he and his crew have done this week is prove that the world can build a modern space station more than 200 miles up.
The things that we did on this mission are exactly the sorts of things that we need to do with Space Station, and I guess in the opinion of the crew here, things have flowed pretty smoothly. Certainly the rendezvous and docking, all of the mechanisms, all of the machinery that had to operated in spectacular function, and I think we've done a pretty good dry run for the sorts of things that we would need to do with an international space station and so on.
The star of this mission has been Norm Thagard. He's the first American to spend more than 3 months in space. He's now increasing his record to more than 110 days. He says for him, the biggest problems were psychological.
For the American on board a Russian space station, you're the only English speaker on board in general. The cultural isolation is extreme. There were times when I went 72 hours without speaking to an English-speaking person. I didn't get a lot of news up here. All of those things start to weigh heavily after a while. Since I knew from the start I could do anything for 3 months, it wasn't going to be a problem for me. If I'd been looking at 6 months, I would have been real worried at about 3 months that I wasn't going to make it.
What would Thagard bring along for a future stay aboard Mir?
Well, if I could have brought my wife along, I probably would have done that. I think I would have paid a lot more attention to the food that was stored for us on board. I think that in general we thought there were areas, room for improvement there. But otherwise, I felt pretty good with what I already had on board. I don't require a lot. I had 2 good companions, and that made up for a lot of the deficiencies.
The undocking promises to be spectacular. The Soyuz capsule attached to Mir will pull away with the new Mir crew aboard. The 2 cosmonauts will make movies of the shuttle as it undocks. Then Soyuz will reattach to the much larger Russian space station while Atlantis moves away for its return to Earth. John Holliman, CNN reporting.
And that's World News from Washington for Monday. I'm Reed Collins.
Just a few seconds, I believe, time, the Space Shuttle Atlantis will separate from the Mir space station, where it's been docked for almost a week. We join CNN's domestic network for coverage of the live event.
Welcome back. This is John Holloman at CNN Center in Atlanta, welcoming CNN's international audience in 200 countries around the world to our CNN domestic audience, which has been here for a little while. We'll take you live back to space for what NASA managers and Russian Space Agency officials say will be one of the most dramatic picture stories we'll be able to bring you on this 4th of July. Let's go up and look at the picture coming in from the payload bay of the Space Shuttle Atlantis, where there are a couple of cameras looking up into space. Let me tell you what we've got here. Above the word "from" on your TV screen is a little black and white dot, and that black and white dot is in fact the Russian Soyuz capsule, which has the crew of the Mir space station aboard. For the past few minutes, it has been moving back from the Shuttle Atlantis, the Atlantis-Mir combination. And what is going on right now is it's pulling back about 200 feet away so that it can do some picture taking today of the undocking of Atlantis from the Mir. That undocking will take place in the next 5 minutes. CNN science correspondent Miles O'Brien, NASA astronaut Kevin Chilton, joining us from the Johnson Space Center in Houston. Gentlemen, as we look at these pictures, let's talk about how complex this maneuver is. Kevin, you and Miles were talking about this from the pilot perspective. Is it very difficult to do this piloting job of the Soyuz to get it away from the Mir?
Well, it's taken a lot of training, of course, to prepare for this, and Anatoly and Nikolai are well prepared. Anatoly has done this before on several other flights that he's made to Mir, so he's very familiar with this type of maneuver.
Stand by, gentlemen. The shuttle has just backed away from the Mir. Let's watch that.
Great.
We can listen to NASA's commentator Rob Navius probably as this happens. The undocking occurred a little bit ahead of schedule.
Three spacecraft orbiting in close proximity to one another. Atlantis, the Mir space station, and a Soyuz capsule filming this. This view from the centerline camera on Atlantis showing it departing from the Crystal module's docking port.
So you're looking into the middle of the docking side of the Mir space station now from the Shuttle Atlantis.
Kevin, that is good news to see that because there were some
point underneath the Mir.
There were some backup plans in place, which would have required them to fire pyrotechnic bolts or even do a spacewalk.
Right. If this normal system had not worked, which just simply drives the hooks with little motors to open up, then they would have had to fire a pyrotechnic system to separate. And had that failed, we had a third method of getting apart, and that would have included an EVA.
Now, you gentlemen, you can see the Mir slowly disappearing on the top of our TV screens as the shuttle drops away from it. What's going to happen now is that the shuttle will pull back till it is sort of looking at the side of Mir, and then it will back away 700 feet to begin this fly around. There's a woman's voice speaking Russian that we'll be able to hear on our feed from Atlantis. It's the voice of astronaut Bonnie Dunbar, maybe the best Russian-speaking woman in the space program, and she's communicating back and forth with the Mir crew, which, as we say, is now aboard that Soyuz module up in the upper left-hand corner of your screen.
Station-keeping position, watching Atlantis.
Soyuz capsule is in its station-keeping mode, as they call it. That essentially means it's just relative to everybody else.
It's fixed. That's right.
Okay. It's a good camera platform.
Exactly. Exactly.
I talked to a NASA official last week who said that he believes that the pictures that we will see later today from the Soyuz capsule cameras will be the most dramatic pictures that we see.
We'll look forward to returning.
It's the voice of Capcom Dave Wolf speaking to the Atlantis crew.
We agree with that, Dave. We agree 100%. We have all three vehicles in sight at this point, and in one of the simulations, the words cosmic ballet came to mind, and I guess that's where we are.
Shuttle Commander Hoot Gibson.
Well put, sir.
I don't know what this is a picture of. I guess maybe that's the Soyuz, the white spot over on the left-hand side of the screen. Anyway, I'm hoping.
In the meantime, aboard the Soyuz capsule, Commander Anatoly Soloviev is maintaining his orientation in relationship to the Mir space station by means of a manual attitude control system and a translational hand controller on the flight deck on the descent module of the Soyuz.
So translated, that means he's flying it by hand?
Exactly.
Atlantis,
exactly.
the sun's in the centerline camera. Inco has O's the iris, no action.
There in Mission Control, you see Story Musgrave, a man with even less hair than your commentator Holloman here, and to his right, Dave Wolf, who's communicating directly to Atlantis. The pictures that we've been seeing from space, this picture, for example, comes from a payload bay camera in the space shuttle. And this is another camera in the payload bay looking at the same thing. You can just see the tip of one of the Mir solar panels in the center, the upper center of your screen. And once again, there's where the two cosmonauts who are going to be in space for a while are located.
Capsule from Atlantis. John, there was a last-minute change of plans yesterday, which changes this maneuver slightly. It was going to be a flip-around maneuver in which pilot Hoop Gibson would turn the shuttle around and do this entire maneuver nose first. Because of the timings involved, they wanted to get good pictures with the sun in just the right place. They removed that maneuver from this whole scenario. So he's going to do this entire fly-around tail first. Now, I'm curious, if you've trained so many hours in one way and you suddenly have this kind of a change, how much will that impact a person like Hoop Gibson?
Not at all, I don't think. Hoot will be able to handle the change without any problem. He spent a lot of time in the simulator, and he's seen it go from top to bottom, if you will, and seeing it go from bottom to top shouldn't be a big change for him.
He said that the docking itself was the piloting challenge of a career. I suppose anything after that is duck soup.
It should be pretty easy after that docking maneuver.
Hoot Gibson said yesterday that the undocking he thought would be much less complicated than the docking. But Miles, as you pointed out, if something had gone wrong in that maneuver, it would have been bad. The ground controllers have now taken control of one of the cameras in the shuttle's cargo bay, and that camera is moving from the shuttle up to the Mir space station. So we can get one, it won't be a last look, we trust, but the last look in a while at least of the Russians' home base in space.
You know, looking at that picture, you can see why they're so concerned about having the sun in just the right position for photography. You really can't get a picture.
It can really clobber your image if you have the sun in the wrong spot. And the timing should be such that we should be able to see the Soyuz redock with Mir.
That should be coming up in about 5 minutes, too. 5 or 6 minutes.
The undocking of the Shuttle Atlantis.
This is the voice of NASA commentator Rob Navius, who has been with us throughout this mission with play-by-play during these hours of the day.
And the way this maneuver is set up, Kevin, it would be very difficult for any of these vehicles to collide, right? I mean, they're sort of in different spheres, aren't they?
They are. They're in different planes or spheres, if you will. Plus, we have the added advantage of having pilots in both vehicles. They can look out the window and avoid each other, should that be required. But the geometry is set up such that there's a low probability of them having even to take avoidance maneuvers.
So you wouldn't call this a risky maneuver, then?
No, I wouldn't. No, but anytime you have three vehicles up there in close proximity, you have to deal with that with some level of concern, certainly.
I found it very interesting, gentlemen, that from the Russian side of things here, before the two cosmonauts left the Mir space station, they turned almost everything off inside it. And the reason for that was, just in case, after they go out and take these pictures, they can't redock with Mir, they're going to have to come back to Earth. That'll leave Mir unpopulated for a while, and they didn't want to leave leave the refrigerator and the ice cream maker and things like that on, because it would use up more power than is necessary. So they have to prepare for the worst before they leave the thing unpopulated for this trip that they're making in space.
That's exactly right. They're just thinking ahead and preparing for the worst case. Of course, we don't anticipate that happening.
That's sort of what we do at CNN, Kevin. We have Miles in Houston in case I can't speak, and I'm here in case something happens to him, and you in case everything else fails for us.
Ready for all scenarios.
Let's hope not.
That was an interesting view from the payload bay.
This view from payload bay cameras on Atlantis showing the Soyuz capsule with Soloviev and Budarin aboard.
Camera B's got a good view of Nick and Anatoly Soyuz.
Kevin, give us a sense of the communication which will be going on between Soloviev and Gibson right now. They're talking on just handheld, regular radios, right?
A VHF radio, just from one vehicle to the next, right, directly in space. Whereas what's kind of interesting, as I heard earlier, the communications to Moscow are being routed through a relay satellite down to Houston and then ground line through to Moscow. So communications can be very complicated here to make sure everybody's tied in and working from the same card.
You know, a layperson might look at it and say, how does it all work, especially when you compound all those patches with a language barrier?
I look at it and say, how does it all work? It's amazing.
Yeah, now, what's happening in space? The Soyuz capsule has done what it separated from Mir to do. The two cosmonauts in there have made some great movies, we hope. We hope there was the film in the camera and the videotape in the TV camera were working. And they're now beginning the move back to the space station. And it'll be a little while before we see the pictures that they've made, but we are anticipating that. Meanwhile, this picture from the space shuttle showing them as they move their way back toward the Mir. I think the different camera angles that we get on this will be very interesting to our viewers around the world as we continue talking about this. Don't believe I have seen picture from the Mir space station, and since they shut most of the systems down there, probably wouldn't anyway.
But the Mediterranean.
All the pictures are coming from Atlantis now, and the ones we get after the cosmonauts power up the space station again will, of course, some of the pictures at least will be from there.
I think we should note, John, that in the Soyuz capsule, there's very limited window space. I know that Budarin has the big window so that he can point his cameras out there. And Soloviev is actually flying using a periscope device, which offers very limited visibility, right?
Right, and so he has to keep careful track of the station and make sure he keeps it in the field of view.
Kevin, is it sort of like the old Apollo capsules? Is it that size and sort of configuration inside, or is it much larger than that?
That's a good approximation. It's very similar to the Apollo-sized capsule.
I interrupted you. Go ahead and finish your thought.
That's a very good approximation, about the size of the Apollo capsules.
Anyway, what's the trick, though, when you have that limited field of view? Is what, to keep one object in your sight?
Never lose sight. Yeah, always keep it in the TV screen, if you will. And so that's the trick. And I'm actually anxious. We saw Hoot dock Shuttle to Mir the other day. I'm anxious that we have the opportunity here to watch Anatoly dock a Soyuz to Mir here.
How narrow a field of view do you suppose he's dealing with?
Actually, I don't know exactly, but I know it gets narrow enough that he's able to see the docking target through it. So it can't be so wide that he can't resolve the docking target. Right.
Gentlemen, we were sort of surprised by when the undocking occurred. It was about 9 minutes after the hour, and we thought it might be a couple of minutes later than that, but we did see it, and we have it in our tape playback room, according to producer Doug Fernand. So we're going to take another look at the undocking from a few minutes back while we continue our discussion here.
Get the IMAX scene with the sun right on the mirror. We couldn't even see the mirror.
There it goes.
Well visually.
Kevin, as you look at that, is that like letter perfect?
It looked fantastic here. We caught it live, John, and the springs did their job, the latches did their job, gave Shuttle a nice gentle push away from Mir, and then when they got about 2 feet away, Hoot started to fly the shuttle away, and it just looked fantastic.
You know, that's a Russian-made docking ring, which was designed initially to be used on the Russian version of the shuttle, the Buran. But it had never been tested with vehicles of this size, had it?
That's correct. It had been tested with the Soyuz module, but it had never been tested with something this big. So this was fantastic. It worked exactly as designed.
You know, what's interesting to me is how it was integrated into the shuttle system. That's got to pose all kinds of technological problems when you're talking about Russian connectors fitting into U.S. connectors and so forth. The fact that this whole system worked must make both programs pretty proud.
It's a giant step in so many areas, both culturally and technically. And so, you know, I think we're just moving forward at a rapid pace here.
Fellas, can you see the picture right now? You can see the thrusters on the Soyuz firing. I've never seen anything like this before, outside of the Apollo 13 movie that I got to see the other night. Isn't that amazing?
It's terrific.
Yeah, there's solar panels there on the Soyuz, and you can see the gases escape as Anatoly Soloviev pilots it around. We've lost our picture from space right now. There again is picture of mission control. We're gonna take a short break in our coverage, but it's going to continue all morning. The fly around of Atlantis around Mir will be coming up in a few minutes. We'll have as many pictures of it as we can, and we'll show them to you. Miles, thank you. Kevin, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen around the world, thank you. Our news coverage continues in a minute. Stay with us.
Give you command.
One of the latest crazes here on Earth, mobile telephones. One of Britain's leading astronomers, Dr. James Cohen, tells the Daily Telegraph that mobile phone signals may be drowning out telescope signals. And as the number of mobile phones grows, Cohen says the only solution he sees is to put telescopes on the dark side of the moon to avoid all the electronic noise. Well, the space shuttle Atlantis is once again flying solo. The Atlantis undocked from the Russian space station Mir this morning, then spent about 90 minutes circling the station and taking pictures. As the shuttle flew off into its own orbit, Houston Control said, "We look forward to returning." CNN's John Holloman has some of the sights and sounds from this historic day in space.
Incur separation.
The shuttle and Mir, both weighing more than 100 tons, pushed apart by springs in the docking adapter, more than 200 miles above the Earth. Equally impressive, the pictures taken from the Russian Soyuz capsule showing the two ships as they moved away from each other. The shuttle flew a complete circle around Mir to take pictures of every exposed inch of the Russian space station. The idea, to give astronauts who will come here later in the year a realistic view of what they'll be seeing.
Dave, we're working on Block 6A.
Finally, pilot Charlie Precourt and Commander Hoot Gibson fired the separation rockets to send the two ships apart once and for all. And you could tell there was some mixed emotion after the shuttle crew watched the space station slip away from view. Finally, the two ships could no longer see each other in space, Atlantis flying solo with its 6 Americans and 2 Russians ready to come back to Earth on Friday. John Holloman, CNN reporting.
Am Himmel etwa 400 Kilometer über unseren Köpfen vollführten russische und amerikanische Astronauten heute eine Art Ballett. Sie dockten an, sie ließen los, 2 Fähren kreisten spielerisch um eine Raumstation. Die Manöver waren ein bisschen riskant, wissenschaftlich, nicht zwingend möglicherweise, aber schön. Guten Abend, liebe Zuschauer. Wir werden Ihnen dieses Ballett noch ausführlich zeigen, wie immer im Umgang mit der Kunst am Schluss und nach dem Wetter. Noch einmal der Blick nach oben. Russen und Amerikaner haben dort heute in der Unendlichkeit des Alls das größte, schwerste Gerät herumrangiert, das je von Menschen außerhalb der Erde zusammengebastelt wurde. Ich sage schon mal auf Wiedersehen und Hildegard Werth erzählt uns vom munteren Treiben und sentimentalen Abschiednehmen in einem besonders exklusiven Hotel.
Es war ein bewegendes Farewell letzte Nacht im Raumlabor an Bord der Atlantis. Kosmonaut Solovjov bekam ein T-Shirt von den Houston Rockets. Während des Trainings im Raumfahrtzentrum ist er zum Basketball-Fan geworden. 5 gemeinsame Tage im All haben den Teamgeist wachsen lassen. Vergessen sind die Sprachprobleme. Gemeinsam können wir alles schaffen, ist das Motto. Und jetzt könnten wir eigentlich zusammen zum Mars fliegen. Die Amerikaner fliegen erst einmal nach Hause. Und die beiden Russen bleiben noch 3 Monate auf der Raumstation. Um das Tandem Atlantis angekoppelt an Mir im Ganzen zeigen zu können, wagten die Mir-Kosmonauten ein Abenteuer. Sie stiegen in die winzige Soyuz-Kapsel und flogen 100 Meter weit weg, vorsichtig an den Sonnenpaddeln vorbei. Der Koloss Mir blieb zum ersten Mal seit vielen Jahren für eine Dreiviertelstunde unbemannt. Bevor sie gingen, löschten Solovjov und Budarin das Licht und stellten die Stromversorgung ab. Eine Vorsichtsmaßnahme für den schlimmsten Fall, dass die Raumstation ins Trudeln geraten würde. Solovjov und Budarin, das hatte man einkalkuliert, hätten dann mit der Soyuz-Kapsel sofort zur Erde zurückkehren müssen. Pünktlich um 1:10 das Ablegen aus der Perspektive der Atlantis. 230 Tonnen Schwerelosigkeit fliegen nun wieder getrennt. Bei unglaublichen 28.000 Stundenkilometern. Die Dockingschleuse der Mir, ursprünglich für die russische Raumfähre Buran geplant, hat ihre Feuertaufe bestanden. Schon im Oktober soll die nächste Visite der Atlantis folgen. Und was sahen die beiden in der Soyuz-Kapsel? Den größten Orbitalkomplex, den Menschen je gebaut haben, in ungewohnt bescheidener Bildqualität. Auch die Amerikaner hatten allerlei Schwierigkeiten mit Lichtreflexen, als sie die Raumstation Mir ein letztes Mal umrundeten. So werden wohl diese Bilder in Erinnerung bleiben. Von einem Abschied, der ein Anfang werden soll. Ein gemeinsamer Aufbruch ins nächste Jahrtausend der Raumfahrt.
The
two craft slowly pulled apart.
Incur separation.
Soyuz Atlantis.
As Atlantis pulled away from Mir, a view of the docking port on the Crystal module. Water venting into space at the bottom right.
Atlantis, it's been an inspiring visit with our neighbors in space. We'll look forward to returning.
We agree with that, Dave. We agree 100%. We have rolling seas and soft landings. We will count the days until you come back and we get to see you again.
Das Rendezvous der russischen Raumstation Mir mit der US-Raumfähre Atlantis bei 28.000 Stundenkilometern ist vorbei. Nun fliegen sie, die 5 Tage lang das größte künstliche Gebilde abgaben, das je im All schwebte. Sie fliegen nun wieder getrennt durch die unendlichen Weiten. Und Amerika scheint in einer Art Weltraumnostalgie. Mag sein, dass dieses Manöver und die wunderschönen Bilder, die vom Soyuz-Raumschiff aus gedreht wurden, dieser Stimmung noch sehr förderlich waren. Jedenfalls ist der Filmstart zu Apollo 13 am vergangenen Wochenende zu einem riesigen Erfolg geworden. Und das, obwohl die 13 für diese Mission keine Glückszahl war. Apollo 13 wurde zu einem der spektakulärsten Abenteuer der bemannten Raumfahrt.
Houston, we are go for launch.
Die Mondmission, die um ein Haar zur Katastrophe geworden wäre. Als sie startete, schaute die Nation schon fast nicht mehr hin. Die 3. Mondlandung. Spannend nur noch für die 3 an Bord. Für Millionen Amerikaner findet das stärkste Weltraumabenteuer heute auf der Erde statt, im Kinofilm über die Rettung von Apollo 13. Jede Vorstellung ausverkauft. Und das, während NASA ums Überleben ringt und sich keiner mehr für Weltraumforschung interessiert. Mike liebt die Raumfahrt. Viel mehr Geld sollte sie bekommen. Mike will zum Mars. Der fatale Griff zum Schalter. Ein Sauerstofftank explodiert. Das halbe Schiff mit ihm. Cool die Meldung an Houston. Wir haben ein Problem. Leck und lahm treibt Apollo eine halbe Million Kilometer vom nächsten Atemzug Luft. Sie haben sie wieder heil runtergebracht. Es war nie wieder so knapp und nie wieder so spannend. Trotzdem, meint er, gibt es auch heute noch Interesse am Raumfahrtprogramm. Da oben soll gerade die Raumstation Mir vorbeifliegen. Da weiß er mehr als die meisten in der Kinoschlange. Das so vernünftige Gemeinschaftsunternehmen mit Russland hat in Amerika niemanden in seinen Bann geschlagen. Astronaut Norm Thagard habe nach 4 Monaten Heißhunger auf Hamburger, wird gemeldet. Naja. Da hatten sie damals andere Sorgen. Überleben. Und dabei auch noch wie Helden wirken. Amerika hat Sehnsucht nach der Zeit, in der alle Probleme lösbar schienen, als Fehlschlag einfach nicht akzeptiert wurde.
Shuttle is doing more medical tests on its 3 newest members. The 3 spacefarers came on board after spending months in the Mir space station. They and 5 fellow astronauts are headed home on Atlantis and due to land on Friday. Well, now to fill us in on what's happening right here on Earth, here's CNN's Valerie Voss with the world weather.
On Thursday morning across the United States, a slow-moving low-pressure area and frontal system will continue to produce stormy weather from Ontario and Quebec south into Texas and northern Mexico, with some unsettled weather across western Canada as well.
The big news from Shuttle Atlantis is the final medical tests and rehabilitation work on the 3 men who've been in space nearly 4 months. Norm Thagard went running on a treadmill, part of a program to help him readjust to Earth's gravity better. His Russian cosmonaut colleagues, who have also been in space for 113 days, were put through their paces by Dr. Ellen Baker and mission specialist Bonnie Dunbar. Thagard says his body seems fine, but emotionally, this has been a rough time in his life.
You're one American on a Russian spacecraft. No one else really speaks English, and there were times when I went days without talking to our folks in the Mission Control Center in Moscow, all of which adds up to a fair amount of isolation.
Shuttle Commander Hoot Gibson spent time in the space lab with Thagard and his Russian cosmonaut buddies. He says the crew is still working hard, even though it's coming back to Earth on Friday.
We are going to be continuing with medical data, getting situation medical data on our test subjects, which are the Mir 18 crew, and getting the orbiter generally ready to come back home.
Cameras in the shuttle payload bay have sent pictures of the home planet back to Earth. Pictures the astronauts tell us fail to show just how pretty this place is. John Holloman, CNN reporting.
Continent, a slow-moving low-pressure area will keep it stormy in the eastern United States. It'll continue wet and cool across southwestern sections of Canada. Pretty quiet in Mexico as well. Low-pressure area will bring a few showers to the northwestern U.S. Have a good day. I'm Valerie Voss.
The following is CNN's coverage of a live event.
I'm John Holloman at the CNN Center in Atlanta. CNN's live coverage of the Space Shuttle Atlantis landing continues now. The shuttle will be landing from south to north at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. The clouds have been building around the landing strip for the past 2 hours, but NASA weather forecasters gave the crew the go-ahead to start the trip down an hour ago. Now, the picture that you're seeing live on CNN at this moment is a picture of the shuttle taken with an infrared camera. You can probably look in the middle of your screen and see the outline of the shuttle. You can see the white shuttle tail sticking up in the background as Atlantis continues to make its way down. The front of the shuttle is pointing toward the downward part of the screen right now as Atlantis makes one of its final turns toward the runway. About 30 minutes ago, Atlantis began to feel the tug of gravity, and for the 3 long-term space travelers aboard, it's the first time they could feel their weight in nearly 4 months. For most of the astronauts on board, this has been a very productive trip. Commander Hoot Gibson and pilot Charlie Precourt got the spaceship docked with Russia's Mir space station on schedule and on time last week, and the undocking on the 4th of July went almost letter-perfect as well. There's an interesting shot of the shuttle. You can see
infrared long-range tracking camera at the Kennedy Space Center, clearly showing the Shuttle Atlantis at the correct angle of attack. Time to touchdown, 2 minutes.
So we have 2 minutes till we'll see Atlantis on the ground. This is, there have been more than 40 landings at the Kennedy Space Center landing strip, and the weather there is cloudy, as you can see a minute ago, but acceptable for an on-time landing. After landing, there will be a long series of events. As soon as the shuttle wheels stop, Norm Thagard will attempt to stand up. His 2 Russian cosmonaut colleagues will decide if they, too, want to try to stand. Their crewmates will be close by to make sure they're okay as they attempt this. They'll be taken out of the shuttle on stretchers and moved to the Operations and Checkout building in Florida for 6 hours of another intensive medical exam. Their families will be there, too. The medical testing will continue for the next several weeks at the Johnson Space Center in Houston, where the 3 will continue rehabilitation work to get back in good physical shape. About 25 minutes from now, the hatch will open on the side of Atlantis, and 20 minutes after that, the astronauts will come out. We don't know if the astronauts who've only been in space for 10 days will walk around and kick the shuttle tires or not, but we'll be looking to see. The Atlantis shuttle orbiter will be off the landing strip by nightfall, towed to NASA's orbiter processing hangar and checked from top to bottom and put back in shape for its next mission,
down the pike,
which will be another trip to the Mir space station. We'll listen in to NASA commentator Rob Navius as the shuttle goes down into its final through the clouds landing at the Kennedy Space Center. The voice you'll be hearing that of Rob Navius, a NASA commentator. Looks like
Gibson now flaring up the nose, landing gear
the wheels.
deployed by pilot Charlie Precourt. Atlantis just a few hundred feet off the deck.
There's going to be an excited seagull there to the left of your screen in about a minute as the shuttle comes by. Shuttle over the landing strip.
Main gear touchdown. The drag chute being deployed by pilot Charlie Precourt, and nose gear touchdown. Atlantis rolling out on runway 15 at the Kennedy Space Center to complete a 4.1 million mile mission and the first docking with the Russian space station Mir.
Shuttle looks good. As I said, by the end of business today, the shuttle will be taken off the landing strip there, towed into the rehab building at the Kennedy Space Center, and made ready for its next flight, which will be late in the year, a return engagement to the Russian Mir space station, where there'll be the main cargo in the cargo bay will be a new docking adapter, which will allow the shuttle in the future to use this docking extension tunnel attached to Mir.
Houston,
This will make.
Kurt, we've got wheel stop.
Atlantis, Houston, we copy wheel stop and welcome home Atlantis. Welcome home Mir 18. Congratulations on your perfect end to your historic mission. A new era in human spaceflight has begun.
Sounds like that statement might have been prepared in advance.
Thank you, Kurt. We couldn't have said it better. We're proud to have been part of it.
Shuttle Commander Hoot Gibson with the capsule communicator.
Atlantis, Houston, stand by for your post-landing deltas.
Okay, Kurt, standing by.
Post-landing deltas, or any problems that might have occurred in the various checklists that the astronauts and ground controllers and people on the ground there in Florida might be seeing. In NASA speak, a delta is something that is a potential problem.
Atlantis, Houston, we have no deltas to your post-landing. Your go to pick up on page 5-3.
No problem.
Okay, 5-3.
As the astronauts and their controllers continue then to go through their post-landing checklist, I'll tell you about the next shuttle launch. It is going to be 6 days from now, the shortest turnaround time for shuttle missions ever attempted. The spaceship on Pad B at Launch Complex 39 is Discovery. It's loaded with a communication satellite. The plan is to launch it Thursday, July 13th, 9:41 in the morning, and CNN will have live coverage for you. One more thing before we go. CNN's coverage of the Space Shuttle program will continue as the astronauts come out. If we get to see them on the ground, we'll try to bring that to you as it happens, and we'll continue to watch to get a medical update on those 3 astronauts, or 1 astronaut and 2 cosmonauts, who are experiencing gravity right now for the first time in 4 months.
Later at 9:54 and 44 seconds Central Time.
That concludes our live coverage of the mission of Space Shuttle Atlantis. I'm John Holloman at CNN Center.
Mission, it's a picture-perfect landing for the U.S. Space Shuttle. For the first time, it's bringing back more passengers than it had carried at launch.
Picture-perfect landing. There were a lot of beautiful pictures on this mission, and apparently a good bit accomplished for not only regular things here on Earth, but diplomatic missions between countries. The Shuttle Atlantis landing was as pretty a picture as the rest of this mission, it seemed to me. It came down on the runway just a few miles from the launch pad, on schedule, through a blue sky filled with some puffy clouds. As soon as the shuttle came to rest, Commander Hoot Gibson gave the news to Mission Control in Houston.
Houston, Atlantis, Kurt, we've got wheel stop.
Atlantis, Houston, we copy wheel stop and welcome home Atlantis. Welcome home Mir 18. Congratulations on your perfect end to your historic mission. A new era in human spaceflight has begun.
In the hours since landing, the 3 people who've been in space for 4 months have tried to stand up and move around a little, and they're in the process of unloading from Atlantis. In the live picture that you see now, they'll go into that people mover vehicle and will be taken, perhaps with some of the other crew members, to a hangar where the 3 people who've been there the longest will be given a quick medical exam. In fact, it'll be a 6-hour medical exam. They'll also get to spend some time with their families today before flying back to Houston for a multi-week series of medical work. Before they left, they got a phone call from the President of the United States.
We built a new relationship between our 2 countries. We're doing things together, and I think that what you and your team and what the Russians did together symbolizes that more than anything that I could ever say. And I think because of your mission, now the United States and Russia, with our partners in Canada and Japan and Europe, are going to be able to meet the challenge of building the International Space Station. And I hope you and all of your team members will take an enormous amount of pride in that.
Now, we've just seen in our live picture coming down from the Kennedy Space Center the retractable door on the people mover pulled back from the space shuttle. That means some or all of the astronauts are on board that vehicle, at least the 3 people who've been in space for the longest period of time. We probably won't see them again for a while. But in the phone call with President Clinton, Norm Thagard sounded tired and a little out of breath, and he told Mr. Clinton he was happy to be contributing to cooperation with the Russians in space. This mission lasted 10 days, and it took years to plan, and it's been a major step, we are told, in putting diplomats into orbit. It took several days of bad weather to get a day clear enough to launch Atlantis on its 10-day odyssey. But its mission was to make history, and that's just what it did.
2, 1, and liftoff of the Space Shuttle Atlantis on a mission that will herald a new day of international cooperation in space.
It didn't take long for the shuttle to catch up to Russia's Mir space station. The docking of the 2 ships was a ballet played out 200 miles in space at 17,000 miles an hour.
Houston, Atlantis, we have capture.
Copy, capture.
After the handshake between the Russian and U.S. commanders, the 2 crews got together inside Mir. It was the first time 10 people have ever flown together in space.
That it was perhaps the proudest moment of my life to be able to take part in an event such as this.
The star of this mission has to be Norm Thagard, medical doctor, expert on long-duration spaceflight, and now the American with more hours in orbit than anyone else. He told CNN he never expected to be in space this long, and it's caused him some problems.
I miss my family a lot. I've depended on them for support, and I've gotten it through the years. It's tough to be away from home. I spent a year in Vietnam. I guess I spent nearly 4 months here. It's something that you feel you have to do.
Although the shuttle astronauts didn't feel the docking with Mir, Thagard and his cosmonaut colleagues aboard the space station certainly did.
When the shuttle docked, we felt it. The 100 tons hitting the station had some impact on us, and it was pretty impressive given the mild sensations with the previous vehicles.
After 5 days together, the shuttle and Mir pulled apart. Not as dangerous as the docking, but remarkable in that the cosmonauts who took over the space station from Thagard and his partners left Mir to take this picture, a grainy but amazing shot of 2 100-ton spaceships slowly kissing goodbye.
Incur separation.
Back inside the shuttle, it was workout time for Thagard and his 2 cosmonaut companions. The treadmill was a daily ritual, along with rehabilitation inside a bag designed to fool the body into thinking there's gravity where there isn't. The 3 long-duration space travelers will spend the next 3 weeks trying to get back to normal after the rude awakening at the landing strip, that their bodies really do weigh something. You know, I can't imagine what those 3 people must be feeling right now, having weighed nothing, literally, for 4 months, and now they're beginning to feel kind of tight.
That's what I was going to ask, John. Light landing, but heavy bodies now, eh?
Yeah, exactly. It's Norm Thagard is the guy with the most United States expertise in this. Of course, the Russians have a great deal of experience in it. One of the things that they did in an effort to make this landing a little easier for the 3 guys was to put them on reclining couches rather than chair seats like they have for the other astronauts. It'll be interesting to see if that particular countermeasure was effective.
Well, John, we can see the pictures of the shuttle. It all looks so smooth. What's next?
Well, there's going to be another shuttle launch about 5 miles from the spot where this picture is taken. There is another shuttle launch pad. There are 2 of them in Florida. There is a shuttle there, poised, ready to go 6 days from now. It'll leave town July the 13th at 13:31 GMT. That's the current schedule, and CNN International will be here to bring it to you live. It looks like there's some dignitaries, by the way, waiting perhaps for the astronaut crew members to come out. I don't know if we have time to show that to our viewers, but
standing next to the
interesting.
Transport vehicle as we expect to see some members of the
flight crew. We can stay for a while? Okay. Okay, good.
Disembark from that transport vehicle momentarily. And
okay, the man on the left of your screen with the gray hair is not the head of NASA, but the head of the Russian space agency, Yuri Kopchev. And he's got a couple people up those stairs, too, that he'd probably like to hug. They haven't come down yet. Well, I guess they won't come down. They're probably already on the way to go back to the hospital. But he's there to symbolize the U.S.-Russian cooperation on this.
Well, John, thanks for joining us and seeing this seeing the landing through. It was great to get the live pictures. We'll keep in touch with you. And
see you next week.
We'll do.
All right.
John Holliman, thanks very much.
Nach 10 Tagen im All ist die amerikanische Raumfähre Atlantis heute in Cape Canaveral wieder gelandet. An Bord waren 8 US-Astronauten und 2 russische Kosmonauten. Sie hatten am ersten Rendezvous der Raumfähre mit der russischen Weltraumstation Mir teilgenommen. 118 Stunden lang waren beide im All miteinander verbunden. Bis 1997 sind 6 weitere Besuche geplant.
The Russian space station Mir, seen from the Shuttle Atlantis, a spectacular sight for a handful of astronauts and cosmonauts, and for millions of TV viewers. But some backyard astronomers find this view of Mir just as spectacular.
The best way to observe Mir is with just the old eye, naked eye observations. It is so bright, and it's difficult to determine where to point a telescope or your binoculars. And it moves so quickly that it's easy to pick up with your eye.
Not only Mir, but the space shuttle and many human-made satellites can be seen with the naked eye.
It's very easy just to step out on your back porch and see a satellite fly over.
Helping people spot satellites is a labor of love for Alex Langousis. He warns the uninitiated it's not easy to know where and when to look. Because satellites and spacecraft are so much closer to Earth than the stars and planets, they show up at different times and places for viewers who watch from even a few hundred miles apart. Their orbits can be changed by the drag of the upper atmosphere or by intentional maneuvering, so their path can't be accurately predicted far in advance. Langousis finds these moving needles in haystacks by getting some specific information on their orbits. Computer users can turn to internet sites run by NASA or independent astronomers.
I can't claim to tell you what each of these numbers mean, but when you put them all together, it will tell you, the shape of the orbit and which way it's inclined and how fast the satellite's moving and everything else.
If all of this sounds a bit overwhelming, Langousis suggests you call an astronomy club or an observatory, or subscribe to astronomy magazines.
The astronomy magazines will tell you a specific interesting satellite. During a particular month, you can see this satellite on such and such a night.
Whether you are searching for Mir or another satellite, the best time for viewing is almost always soon after sunset or soon before dawn, when the sun is below the horizon, but can still hit the satellite and make it shine. With Backyard Universe, I'm Miles O'Brien, CNN reporting. For Norm Thagard and his 2 cosmonaut colleagues, this mission is by no means complete. They now face many weeks of intense medical exams at the hands of researchers who want to know more about how long-term stays in space affect the human body. This mission was just the first of 7 Shuttle Mir dockings scheduled over the next 2 years. It's phase 1 of a 3-phase plan to build an international space station in orbit by 2002. One of the big challenges facing space station builders is communication. Aside from the US and Russia, Japan, Canada, and Europe are partners in this endeavor. Without some careful thought, the space station could become an orbiting Tower of Babel. But of course, all of this is the subject of some careful thought. In space, there is little margin for error.
Houston, Atlantis, we have capture.
But these days, there is plenty of opportunity for things to get lost in the translation.
Shuttle Atlantis down.
Ask cosmonaut Sergei Krikalev, who has flown on the U.S. space shuttle and logged 15 months aboard Russia's Mir space station.
Sometimes I saw that it's just kind of misunderstanding. One people trying to help other people, but it's not very helpful because they misunderstood each other. So we try to improve this mutual understanding.
Krikalev is one of the more visible players on the team trying to overcome the cultural, technical, geographic, and of course, linguistic differences between the U.S. and Russian space programs. A few consoles away in NASA's Mission Control Center, you'll find the RIO, or Russian Interface Officer. Sitting beside a translator, the RIO is on an open line to the Russian Control Center in the Moscow suburb of Kaliningrad. This is the primary link between flight directors at the 2 centers.
It's like carrying on 2 telephone conversations at once.
Sally Davis was the RIO when Atlantis and Mir docked.
It's hard to describe in words what would be easier if they were sitting next to you and pointing to it on paper. You have to be real specific and flowery in what you say to make it come across on the other end where they could picture it in their mind as well.
But help is never far away. In a back room adjacent to the flight control room, Russian consultants are plugged in and listening. A similar U.S. team is posted in Russia. In all, there are a dozen open lines linking controllers and consultants in Houston and Kaliningrad. It's basically the same communication setup devised for the Apollo-Soyuz docking 20 years ago. Eventually, both space agencies would like to link their computer systems so they can share data more easily. But for now, they are relying heavily on fax machines. In fact, the detailed Russian proposal to undock a Soyuz capsule to photograph Atlantis pulling away from Mir came in the form of a 20-page fax. Controllers in Houston had 24 hours to translate and digest the complex document, then incorporate it into the flight plan.
We've done these type of communications in the 2 years leading up to the flight, but we've never been in really a hurry to do it until now.
The system may sound ad hoc and cumbersome in this age of instant digital information, but NASA Flight Director Bob Castle says neither control center is flying in the dark.
We know infinitely more about the Mir station today than we did 2 years ago, and the Russians know infinitely more about the shuttle today than they did 2 years ago. We've learned a lot about each other's vehicles and how each other does business already.
Of course, no one is claiming the system is perfect. In one fax to Russia, a NASA controller referred to the petals on the docking ring, which links Mir and the shuttle.
They look like petals of a flower, but she spelled it wrong in English. She spelled it like petals on a bicycle. And when it got translated into Russian, the Russians couldn't figure out what she was talking about.
All of this is bound to get easier as this partnership matures. And if it leads, as NASA hopes, to construction of an international space station, controllers in Houston will find things may get even simpler. The official common language on the space station is English. For many people, there's nothing more boring than someone else's home movies or a photo album. But the pictures you're about to see may be the exception to that rule. It's the photo album from Mir. And this past week, the most recent residents to return from the Russian space station showed off some glimpses of what life is like up there. U.S. astronaut and Mir 18 crew member Norm Thagard narrated the slide and movie show at a news conference in Houston. It showed Mir in all its cluttered glory. He documented work inside and outside Mir and caught cosmonaut Gennady Strekalov strumming a six-string and giving a haircut to Commander Vladimir Dezhurov.
I always wondered, how do the cosmonauts come back looking like they're in reasonably good condition and their hair is all neat and everything, and I found out. And Gennady's prices were reasonable, too.
When it came time for the docking with Atlantis, it's apparent all eyes and cameras aboard Mir were pressed against its portholes.
I think at the last we were all glad to see the shuttle come up there, and not the least of the reason was just the sheer beauty of seeing the shuttle, because it is a beautiful vehicle, no question about it. And to look out through a window. Someone asked me, well, did you watch the docking on the monitor? And I said, no, I looked at it through the window. And that is a thrill I'll never forget. It was as though we had it on a fishing line and we're just slowly reeling it in. Very controlled, very precise. I had thought beforehand that we'd all be a bit nervous looking out and seeing two large objects so close in space. But when you saw how well controlled it was, all of that went away. I don't think any of us were nervous, except Hoot might want to comment about sweaty palms or something while he was operating the controls. But from our side, we never had a moment's concern at all.
He is referring to Hoot Gibson, the commander of Atlantis, who so deftly directed his shuttle down the narrow corridor toward a perfect docking. By the way, after nearly 4 months on Mir, Norm Thagard says he's a bit worse for the wear. He admits to getting winded more easily, but otherwise says he feels no lingering effects from spending all that time in a weightless environment.
Guten Abend, meine Damen und Herren. Das erste gemeinsame Weltraumunternehmen der Amerikaner und Sowjets verläuft bisher nach Plan. In 50 Minuten beginnt auf Cape Canaveral die zweite Etappe des Projekts, das von vielen guten Wünschen und politischen Würdigungen aus Ost und West begleitet wird. Und dann startet diese Rakete vom Typ Saturn B1. Sie bringt die Apollo-Kapsel mit den 3 Astronauten Slayton, Brand und Stafford in eine Umlaufbahn um die Erde. Sie wollen sich übermorgen mit den sowjetischen Kosmonauten Kubasow und Leonow treffen. Die beiden sind nach einem reibungslosen Start von Baikonur seit 6,5 Stunden im All.
40 Sekunden vor dem Start. Der große Versorgungsmast schwenkt von der Rakete zurück, die die Soyuz-Kapsel vom sowjetischen Weltraumbahnhof Baikonur in die Erdumlaufbahn bringen soll. Nach 18 Jahren sowjetischer Weltraumfahrt wird erstmals ein Start live im Augenblick des Ereignisses übertragen. 1 Milliarde Menschen können zuschauen. Von der mehr als 50 Meter hohen und 300 Tonnen schweren Rakete löst sich nun auch das elektrische Zentralkabel. Die Rakete wird nur noch von den 4 Greifarmen am Boden gehalten, die im Augenblick des Starts zurückschwenken. Der Befehl zur Zündung ist erteilt. Um 13:20 Uhr. Auf einem orange-roten Feuerball hebt sich die Rakete in den fast wolkenlosen Himmel über der Steppe. Nur Sekunden nach dem Start melden sich die Kosmonauten, Kommandant Leonow und sein Bordingenieur Kubasow bei der Bodenkontrolle Kaliningrad mit der Versicherung, alles in Ordnung. Die Beschleunigung ist gar nicht so schlimm. Genau nach Plan lösen sich die Raketenstufen voneinander. Nach 9 Minuten erreicht Soyuz eine vorerst elliptische Umlaufbahn. Sie wird zur Kreisbahn in 225 Kilometer Höhe stabilisiert. Der Höhe, in der von Donnerstag an Apollo und Soyuz für 44 Stunden eine Weltraumeinheit bilden werden. Was die Politiker im Mai 1972 als Entspannungsgeste in Moskau vereinbarten, wird nun technisch realisiert. Das sowjetische Fernsehen zeigte auch, wie die Kosmonauten heute Morgen in ihre Raumanzüge schlüpften. Im Bild Soyuz-Kommandant Leonow, 41 Jahre alt. Er ist einer der Raumfahrtpioniere. Am 18. März 1965 verließ er als erster Mensch in Erdumlauf sein Raumschiff und schwebte durch das All. Leonow, stets gut gelaunt, hat seine Weltraumabenteuer in packender Sprache beschrieben. Sein Bordingenieur Kubasow, 40 Jahre alt, wird als ein Mensch beschrieben, den nichts aus der Ruhe bringen kann. Auch er hat eine kosmische Ersttat hinter sich. An Bord von Soyuz 6 erprobte er erstmals die Schweißtechnik unter den Bedingungen des Weltraums.
Die amerikanischen Astronauten schliefen noch, als Soyuz in Baikonur abhob. Sie sahen später eine Aufzeichnung des Starts. Für sie begannen die letzten Vorbereitungen am Nachmittag. Dazu gehörte auch noch einmal eine medizinische Untersuchung. Der Start in Cape Canaveral wird voraussichtlich wieder von vielen 100.000 Zuschauern an Ort und Stelle verfolgt. Manche von ihnen warten dort schon seit dem Morgen. Vor etwa 1,5 Stunden sind die 3 Astronauten an Bord der Apollo-Kapsel gegangen. Die Treibstofftanks der Trägerrakete sind gefüllt, das Wetter ist gut. Nach den letzten Meldungen wird nicht mehr damit gerechnet, dass Gewitter den Start gefährden.
Auf ihren Kreisbahnen im All verfolgen das sowjetische Raumschiff Soyuz und die Apollo-Kapsel der Amerikaner einander. Apollo übernimmt dabei die Hauptarbeit, weil mehr Treibstoff an Bord ist. Wenn Soyuz seine 36. Erdrunde hinter sich hat und die später gestartete Apollo-Kapsel die 29., legen beide Raumschiffe aneinander an. Sie befinden sich dann im Raum über Deutschland. Die starre Verbindung soll am Donnerstag um 17:15 Uhr hergestellt sein. Die Raumschiffe bleiben fast 2 volle Tage verbunden. Gegen Ende dieser Phase legt Apollo am Sonnabend vorübergehend ab, um Soyuz für ein Experiment gegen die Sonne abzuschirmen. Die Russen können so eine Sonnenverfinsterung unter idealen Bedingungen studieren. Soyuz landet am Montag um 11:51 Uhr in Kasachstan. Während sowjetische Flüge stets auf dem Erdboden enden, wassern die Apollo-Kapseln. Die Apollo-Rückkehr ist für Donnerstag, 24. Juli um 22:18 Uhr vorgesehen.
The United States plans no further manned space flights until 1979.
Ebenso wie heute Mittag den Start der Soyuz-Kapsel von Baikonur überträgt das deutsche Fernsehen auch den Start der Apollo-Kapsel auf Cape Canaveral direkt, und zwar von 20:49 Uhr an.
Bundesforschungsminister Matthöfer verfolgte den Sojus-Start bei einer Pressekonferenz im Forschungszentrum der Deutschen Forschungs- und Versuchsanstalt für Luft- und Raumfahrt in Köln-Porz. Die DFVLR ist Projektleiter der deutschen Beteiligung am Apollo-Sojus-Programm. Herr Minister, wie sieht die deutsche Beteiligung im All aus?
Von den 27 Projekten, die durchgeführt werden, stellen wir 3. Einmal das Elektrophorese-Projekt, das hier untergebracht ist. Da wollen wir das Trennverfahren für biologische Substanzen, die uns vielleicht einmal in der Krebsforschung nützlich sein können, studieren. Mit dem Biostack Experiment soll der Einfluss kosmischer Strahlung auf biologische Substanzen, also die Auswirkungen auf Erbschäden, auf Langschäden und so weiter, studiert werden. Wir hoffen, dass wir dann zusätzliche Erkenntnisse bekommen für die Strahlentherapie kranker Gewebe. Und schließlich studieren wir noch mit Hilfe von Fischen den Einfluss der Schwerelosigkeit auf deren Orientierungsverhalten. Und wir hoffen, dass wir dadurch Aufschlüsse bekommen über das Entstehen von Raum- und Luftkrankheiten.
Welche Bedeutung hat dieser deutsche Beitrag für die künftigen Weltraumprojekte der Bundesrepublik?
Wir erwerben uns durch unsere Beteiligung an der Vorbereitung zusätzliche Erfahrungen bei der Durchführung bemannter Raumfahrtprojekte.
Guten Abend, meine Damen und Herren. Amerikaner und Russen umkreisen seit 3 Stunden gemeinsam die Erde. Problemlos und weich wurden die Raumschiffe Apollo und Soyuz kurz nach 17 Uhr aneinander gekoppelt. In wenigen Minuten wollen 2 der 3 amerikanischen Astronauten durch das Verbindungsstück zu ihren sowjetischen Kollegen in die Soyuz-Kapsel hinüberklettern.
Vor knapp 3 Stunden. Apollo und Soyuz sind in der letzten Phase der Annäherung. Die Fernsehkamera erfasst aus der Apollo-Kapsel heraus das Soyuz-Raumschiff, das nur noch wenige Meter entfernt ist. Beide Satelliten rasen mit 8 Kilometern pro Sekunde durch den Weltraum. Apollo manövriert sich vorsichtig an das sowjetische Raumschiff heran. Die Bodenkontrollen Houston in Texas und Kaliningrad bei Moskau stehen ebenso in ständigem gegenseitigen Kontakt wie die Mannschaften der beiden Raumschiffe. Die Schlussphase, Minuten früher als vorgesehen. Apollo und Soyuz koppeln aneinander an, stellen eine mechanische Verbindung her. Apollo-Kommandant Stafford meldet in russischer Sprache Kontakt. Alles verläuft nach Plan. Soyuz-Kommandant Leonov meldet in englischer Sprache, Soyuz und Apollo reichen einander die Hände. Die Kopplung zwischen Apollo und Soyuz findet über dem Atlantik statt. Der Flugplan hatte die Kopplung über Deutschland vorgesehen. Bei einer Geschwindigkeit von fast 29.000 Kilometern in der Stunde bedeutet jedoch jede geringfügige Abweichung vom Flugplan bereits eine sehr große Entfernung. Aus Apollo melden die Astronauten einen stechenden Brandgeruch. Er verfliegt jedoch, Houston sieht keine Gefahr. Seit mehr als einer Stunde sind die Apollo-Astronauten Stafford und Slayton in der Kopplungsschleuse, die zu Soyuz hinüberführt. Diese Schleuse ist von den Amerikanern konstruiert worden. Sie ermöglicht den Austausch der Mannschaften zwischen 2 technologisch unterschiedlichen Raumschiffen. Über diesen Flug hinaus hat dieser Kopplungstunnel Bedeutung, denn er erlaubt, dass sowjetische oder amerikanische Raumschiffe einander in Raumnot helfen können. Wenn die Tür, die zur Soyuz-Kapsel hinüberführt, geöffnet ist, werden sich Apollo-Kommandant Stafford und Soyuz-Kommandant Leonov die Hände reichen. Zur ersten Begegnung im All, die von den Politikern Nixon und Brezhnev als Geste der Entspannung vereinbart wurde. Die Soyuz-Kosmonauten Leonov und Kubasov sind Gastgeber bei dieser ersten Begegnung. Noch 2-mal ist ein gegenseitiger Besuch der Mannschaften in dem jeweils anderen Raumschiff vorgesehen. Aus der langen Phase des gemeinsamen Trainings kennen sich Astronauten und Kosmonauten sehr gut. Was sie einander über die streng vom Flugplan geregelte Zeremonie der Begegnung hinaus sich an persönlichen Geschenken überreichen, das wollten weder die Bodenstationen Houston in Texas noch Kaliningrad bei Moskau verraten.
Eines der spektakulärsten wissenschaftlichen Experimente ist nach der Trennung von Apollo und Soyuz geplant. Das amerikanische Raumschiff wird sich dann vor die Sonne manövrieren und dadurch für die Soyuz-Kosmonauten eine künstliche Sonnenfinsternis schaffen. Die sowjetischen Weltraumfahrer wollen dann mit Spezialkameras Aufnahmen vom Sonnenrand machen. Das sowjetische Fernsehen berichtet in großer Aufmachung vom Rendezvous mit den Amerikanern. Die Sowjetbürger können zum ersten Mal ausführlich live die Ereignisse im Weltraum verfolgen. Das deutsche Fernsehen bringt im Anschluss an diese Tagesschau weitere Weltraumberichte in der Sendung Bilder aus der Wissenschaft.
Drücken. Die 5 Weltraumfahrer aus den USA und aus der Sowjetunion arbeiteten heute an Bord ihrer zusammengekoppelten Raumschiffe an gemeinsamen wissenschaftlichen Experimenten.
Heute Vormittag gegen 11 Uhr öffnete Apollo-Astronaut Brandt die Luke, die zu Soyuz hinüberführt. Brandt war gestern bei der ersten Begegnung zwischen Russen und Amerikanern allein an Bord von Apollo zurückgeblieben. Jetzt schwebt er in das russische Raumschiff hinüber. Kurz darauf wechselt Soyuz-Kommandant Leonov zu Apollo hinüber. Die Kamera zeigt jetzt die Soyuz-Kapsel. Links im Bild der Amerikaner Brandt, rechts der sowjetische Flugingenieur Kubasov. Beide arbeiten ebenso an gemeinsamen Versuchen wie auf der anderen Seite in Apollo Soyuz-Kommandant Leonov und der Amerikaner Stafford. Unter anderem schmelzen sie Metalle unter den Bedingungen des Weltraums. Gegen 14 Uhr Aufnahmen von der Erde, während die miteinander verbundenen Raumschiffe in 225 Kilometer Höhe über die Weiten der Sowjetunion gleiten. Das Essen nehmen Kosmonauten und Astronauten gemeinsam ein. Hühnchen mit Ei. Thomas Stafford, rechts, schwärmt von einer amerikanischen Spezialität, die er seinem Gast Leonov offeriert. Mit einem freundschaftlichen Klaps ist das dritte Umsteigen begleitet. Der in sein Raumschiff zurückkehrende Soyuz-Kommandant Leonov hilft dem Amerikaner Vance Brandt beim Umsteigen. Nur die Schlussphase eines solchen Umsteigemanövers geht so mühelos. Um 18:30 Uhr gaben Astronauten und Kosmonauten eine Pressekonferenz aus dem All. In Soyuz links Kommandant Leonov, rechts Apollo-Kommandant Stafford. Beide Kommandanten loben die Zusammenarbeit und hoffen auf weitere gemeinsame Forschungsarbeit. Auf die hohen Kosten dieses Unternehmens angesprochen, versichern Kosmonauten wie Astronauten, dies seien Investitionen in die Zukunft, die sich auszahlen würden. In der Apollo-Kapsel antworten der Astronaut Slayton links, der Kosmonaut Gubassow und der Amerikaner Brandt, auf dem Kopf stehend, auf die Fragen. Auch sie glauben, dass mit diesem Unternehmen ein Tor in die Zukunft aufgestoßen sei.
Dieses Foto von Parteichef Brezhnev veröffentlichte heute die sowjetische Nachrichtenagentur TASS. Am Fernsehschirm verfolgte er gestern Nachmittag in seinem Moskauer Arbeitszimmer das Zusammenkoppeln von Soyuz und Apollo.
Der erste gemeinsame amerikanisch-sowjetische Weltraumflug ist heute erfolgreich abgeschlossen worden. Vor knapp 4 Stunden koppelten die Raumschiffe Apollo und Soyuz voneinander ab. Über ihre letzten Experimente telefonisch aus Houston Werner Büdeler.
Mit einer Minute Verspätung entkoppelten Apollo und Soyuz um 13:03 Uhr 220 Kilometer über der Erde voneinander. Apollo bewegte sich bis auf 200 Meter von Soyuz weg und deckte dabei die Sonne für das sowjetische Raumfahrzeug ab. Die so erzeugte künstliche Sonnenfinsternis ermöglichte es den Kosmonauten, die Sonnenkorona, den Strahlenkranz um die Sonne, zu fotografieren. Die vorgesehenen Fernsehbilder von Apollo, die aufgenommen werden sollten durch die Soyuz-Mannschaft, allerdings blieben aus. Die Fernsehkamera an der Außenseite des Soyuz-Raumfahrzeuges funktionierte nicht. Nach dem Sonnenfinsternis-Experiment und dem Wiederankoppeln gewannen die Apollo-Astronauten beeindruckende Fernsehbilder Nordafrikas. Auch das Mittelmeer sowie Sizilien und Italien wurden von der Kamera erfasst. Im weiteren Verlauf überflogen die Raumfahrzeuge Griechenland, die Türkei und das Schwarze Meer. Nach erneuter Kopplung fand um 16:26 Uhr die endgültige Trennung statt. Hier schlossen sich ein Formationsflug mit Umfliegung des Soyuz-Raumfahrzeuges durch Apollo und ein wissenschaftliches Experiment an. Um 19:36 Uhr änderte Apollo seine Bahn. Das Raumfahrzeug wird von nun an endgültig eigene Wege ziehen.
This is Shuttle Launch Control from the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. The countdown for the launch of Atlantis on Space Shuttle mission STS-71 is continuing on schedule today. Launch of Atlantis today will mark a number of historic milestones involving U.S. activities in space, including the 100th U.S. human space launch dating back to Alan Shepard's 15-minute flight 34 years ago. Work at Launch Pad 39A, as well as operations here in Firing Room 1 of the Launch Control Center, is continuing. This is our second launch attempt in the past 4 days. The launch of Atlantis was scrubbed on Saturday due to severe weather at KSC. Our weather today looks a whole lot better. In fact, overnight, weather forecasters doubled our chances of being able to launch today. Currently, we're showing a 60% chance of being able to launch on time. Situated in Atlantis Payload Bay is the orbiter docking system, which will allow Atlantis to dock for the first time with the Mir space station. Also in the payload bay is the Space Lab Long Module, which is connected by tunnel to the docking system in the orbiter's crew compartment. Atlantis will carry into orbit a 7-member crew consisting of 5 U.S. astronauts and 2 Russian cosmonauts, which are designated as the Space Station Mir-19 crew. The 2 Mir-19 crewmen will remain on the Russian-made space station, changing places with the Mir-18 crew, who will return to Earth aboard Atlantis. The Mir-18 crew, which also includes astronaut Dr. Norm Thagard, has been aboard Mir since March the 16th. This is Shuttle Launch Control at T-minus 3 hours and holding. And we have live TV of our 7 crew members who will fly aboard Atlantis today, beginning with Commander Robert Hoot Gibson, who will be on his 5th space shuttle flight. He is the former chief of the astronaut office just prior to taking this command position for this most significant flight, STS-71, which will dock for the first time with the Russian Mir space station. Gibson is being joined by his pilot and his mission specialists, as well as the 2 cosmonauts who will fly aboard Atlantis today. They are being joined by mission specialists Ellen Baker. She is on her 3rd flight, and she is the payload commander for STS-71. She has prime responsibility for the space lab that is situated in Atlantis Payload Bay. This looks like our mission specialist, Greg Harbaugh, and it's difficult to distinguish them sometimes in their helmets and suit, but he is responsible for the orbiter docking system, which is also in Atlantis Payload Bay. Next we have one of our 2 cosmonauts who will be flying on board today. This is Nikolai Budarin, who is on his 1st space flight. Mission specialist Bonnie Dunbar is preparing for her 4th flight. She trained in Star City in Russia as the backup to astronaut Dr. Norm Thagard, who is currently aboard Mir. She trained in Star City in Russia as the backup to astronaut Dr. Norm Thagard, who is currently aboard Mir, and she would have been aboard the Mir space station at this time if there had been any reason to not permit Dr. Thagard to fly. Of course, he has been on board for the past 3 months, and now she's going to go and greet him and assist in the process to bring him back. Our 2nd cosmonaut who will be flying aboard the Space Shuttle Atlantis today is Anatoly Soloviev. He is on his 4th flight into space, this of course being his 1st space shuttle launch, and he is the commander for the Mir-19 crew. The Mir-19 crew, of course, consisting of himself and Budarin. This is Shuttle Launch Control at T-minus 3 hours and holding, and we have live pictures of our 7-person crew who are going to be flying today aboard Space Shuttle Atlantis. They are departing their crew quarters on the 3rd floor of the Operations and Checkout Building in KSC's industrial area, entering the elevator along with other astronaut support personnel, Dave Leestma, John Casper, the weather coordinator, as well as some of the crew for Atlantis, again, are approaching the pad surface, climbing the 50-foot inclination as they make their way in the astronaut van to the base elevators of the fixed service structure. They will then climb to the 195-foot level, where the orbiter access arm then will allow them to ingress the vehicle at the point of the crew module. The orbiter seating arrangement for the ascent will be Commander Gibson and pilot Precourt on the flight deck, joined by mission specialists Ellen Baker and Greg Harbaugh. And then on the middeck, we will have seated mission specialist Bonnie Dunbar, as well as our 2 cosmonauts who will be flying aboard today, Soloviev and Budarin.
let's go for orbital access arm retract.
And retraction of the orbiter access arm is now moving.
OTC PLT APU pre-starts complete with 3 gray tactics. Cessation.
Standing by for the gaseous oxygen vent hood to be slowly retracted from the top of the external tank.
Clear caution and warning memory. Verify no unexpected errors. Okay, caution and warning memory is clear. No unexpected errors. Copy.
Everything looks good for launch today as Atlantis begins its 10-day odyssey to dock with Russia's Mir space station, the 100th human U.S. launch in U.S. history.
And flight crew, this is OTC. Close and lock your visors. Initiate O2 flow. Godspeed on the 100th U.S. manned mission in space. Flight crew copies. Visors in O2. Thanks for the great help. Yeah, let's go for ET LH2 pressurization.
T-minus 20. 15. 12.
10.
T-minus 10. 9. 8. 7. 6. 5. We have 3 main engines up and running. 2. 1. And liftoff of the Space Shuttle Atlantis on a mission that will herald a new day of international cooperation in space.
Houston now controlling.
Houston, Oahu, Atlantis is in the roll.
Roger, roll, Atlantis. Atlantis is completing a roll maneuver as the vehicle turns into a heads-down position, on course for a 161 nautical mile orbit and rendezvous with Space Station Mir. SRB separation is confirmed aboard the orbiter. Atlantis is downrange from the launch site 32 nautical miles. Altitude is 170,000 feet.
All vents open. Copy vents.
P0, FRB ignition.
Liftoff confirmed. Copy liftoff confirmed.
Houston, Oahu, Atlantis is in the roll.
Roger, roll, Atlantis. Like I didn't see the roll. Copy, roll. Throttle up, 3 at 104. Go at throttle up. Atlantis, Houston, go at throttle up.
Flight Fido. Roger, go at throttle up.
Slightly depressed as expected. Copy, slightly depressed as expected.
Roger, press to Miko.
Single engine Zaragoza 104.
Atlantis, Houston, single engine Zaragoza 104.
Roger, single engine Zaragoza 104. And Kurt, if you're ready, we'll give you AC bus sensor activation.
Eagle, we're ready. We're ready. Atlantis, we are ready. GPS.
I'd like to get a go for the BFS Miko +5.
You have a go.
Copy.
Fly Max. Max. Good cooling on all 3. We'll go for the shutdown DTO for the ascent checklist. Go for APU hydraulic shutdown per the chip. Fido, you copy. I'd like to give an update on OMS 2 within the next couple of minutes.
Copy, we're working it.
Shuttle Atlantis. Out to the ODS whenever you're ready.
Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, that all went very well according to the procedure and without any difficulty. I have removed and stowed the 3 identified caps at the fore and aft sections of the booster fan and at the aft end of the mixing box forward of the ODS. I verified good airflow coming out the top of the outlet there, around the top of the halo and the external airlock, top of the ODS in other words. And the payload isolation valve was closed, it is open, and I think that's it. Let me know if you have any questions, but I think we've got a good configuration.
This big caution not to jar or bang it or anything like that, so we're going to do this real gently.
Он мне все бананы свои отдал.
А это неправильно.
Atlantis, it's a good MC4.
Okay, Dave, thanks.
Copy 1890.
First handheld mark was at 2300.
Copy.
I've searched around, and 24 Alpha is not one of the ones we have on board, I'm afraid. We have 24, but not 24 Alpha.
Copy. We may use some of this KU time to get that to you. Atlantis Houston, we show vestibule pressurization complete. And please coordinate with the Mir crew for the leak check.
Okay, Dave, we'll look at that.
He copies. He's not at the mic right now, but we'll make sure he understands.
And Dave, just to update you, the Mir folks have opened their hatch, and they're in the process of removing the lights and the standoff cross and target and that sort of stuff.
Copy. The Mir hatch is open. Concur. Say hi to Norm.
Houston, we think it's time to open the hatch. We're going to proceed if you agree.
We concur. We have a good image of you. Your go to open the shuttle hatch.
Okay, here goes.
A lot easier without gravity. Dave, we're just finishing configuring KU to COM. Matter of fact, I think we're done. You should be able to take it.
We have it. We see it. It looks beautiful.
We have it, Charlie, and that is just spectacular. We see the station clearly through the pedals of the docking ring.
And Houston, both side hops are TCS to nav now.
Okay, excellent.
Copy.
слишком светло, да?
Да, сейчас на свет выходим. Ну, это у нас, а может на земле...
Картинка, я имею в виду.
Да. Houston, Atlantis, we're stopped at about the 30-foot station keeping point, and we're seeing essentially a 0.3 of a degree fly out in a couple of the axes, but that's about it.
Good news.
Transmitting in the blind, good news. Mirror dynamic controls disabled and gyros are desaturated.
Вот оттуда.
Лица.
Володь, переиграл всю корзину там, или может иллюминатор, ну там позоображай. Понял. Уже сейчас касание, какое элемент. 7 футов. 7 футов.
Ought to be there.
Есть касание. Есть индикаторный... Houston, Atlantis, we have capture.
Copy capture.
Copy capture.
Damping on, capture confirmed.
Станция перешла в индикатор.
By GNC, we're free drift and low Z. Copy, free drift.
Yeah, you ought to see it from here.
We'd all like to. We're free drift station Mir. After 20 years, our spacecraft are docked in orbit again. Our new era of space exploration has begun.
We got a flight. We just got it.
Houston, we think it's time to open the hatch. We're going to proceed if you agree.
We agree.
We concur. We have a good image of you. Your go to open the shuttle hatch.
Okay, here goes.
Наша лучше?
Лучше, да.
Есть у них крытие. Пошел.
A lot easier without gravity.
People are going to get disoriented watching this. Yeah, for sure.
Good.
Take the one that's out of the camcorder, not the spare, but the...
Collision. Signal right or left?
Ship's passing in the night. I guess we should pass on the right, shouldn't we?
Yeah. See green lights and red lights.
Очень похоже. Да, это почти, наверное, одинаково. И это ульт тоже такой же похоже. Да. Все похоже. Да. И двигатели, это для управления двигателем. Да, для управления двигателем.
Закрыт. Hatch is closed.
Да, понятно, но вопрос. Вы готовы к сбросу давления? Это вопрос на странице 1.52.
What a ham. He really is, isn't he? Yeah, they're like pressure pieces of stuff. But the Delta P, the next one down, which you can barely see, is going down.
Висел клапани на боред станция мерят закрити, с клапани да легли. Хорошо.
Finder, and you can see some of the jet firings here as he was holding attitude just right out the window. We felt like we could reach out and touch him because he was that close to us. His range, I think, was about 65 meters, but again, he looked very, very close as the actual time for undocking approached.
Looking for about 5.
Bonnie, how's Anatoly look?
He's looking good. He's real steady.
15%.
I see a big opening.
He's doing manual control. I can see his jets firing.
Okay, you ready on your inputs? Ready. What are we going to do? Any moment now. We're going to do...
There it is.
Undock is complete.
Houston, we have separation.
Okay, we've got pedals.
Pedals are clear.
Okay, I see 2 feet.
I see 2, yep.
Okay, A, inertial. Inertial.
Verify
THC out, 4 pulses.
KIC, Roger. Here, 2 feet.
Shuttle Atlantis.
Beautiful.
All operators.
Я спрашивал насчет коррекции глобуса.
Rendezvous.
Go.
Fido.
Go.
Ecom.
We're go.
Eagle.
Go.
Payloads.
Go.
GPS.
And Dave, we're
Go.
going to stand
Max.
by on a go for
Rio.
separation from you, and we're going to stand by on a call, I guess 5 minutes after that, for a call to go to free drift, and we're going to wait on your call.
Okay, Capcom.
Copy, we're polling.
Capcom. Moscow.
Визир
Houston are
причал.
go for set.
Переложили.
Atlantis, Moscow, and Houston are go for separation.
Vizir причал. Great, Dave, thank you. We copy go for separation.
Rio.
Moscow's ready for shuttle free drift for Soyuz on dock.
Atlantis, AOST received.
Rio, to copy the hooks you're driving.
Okay,
Rio
copy,
flight,
Dave,
what's the
and
status?
we heard from Anatoly that he has issued the command to begin the separation sequence for Soyuz.
Copy.
Flight Rio command.
Fantastic.
Okay, thank you.
If you're looking at the Spectre camera, he's coming out.
We see it. Looks nice.
Copy, Hoot. We see Soyuz on dock.
Okay, and we've got the let's see, which view do we have up on monitor 2? The C camera is seeing him start to come out from behind Spectre.
Let it go. Let me go to C. Inco.
Copy, we'll switch.
Go do it.
Расход. Скажите нам расход по СИРТу.
Houston, we have separation.
Incur separation.
Well, good call, Rendezvous.
Shuttle Atlantis.
Let it go. Go to Centerland. Let it go a little further.
Copy. Flight Gen C, we're inertial.
Copy inertial.
Принято.
This is Mission Control, long-range tracking cameras of the Kennedy Space Center now showing the Shuttle Atlantis as it approaches runway 15. Time to touchdown is 5 minutes. Atlantis coming down the pike, on target for a landing less than a minute from now. Descending at a very steep angle, Gibson will shortly pull up the nose in a pre-flare maneuver. Gibson now flaring up the nose, landing gear deployed by pilot Charlie Precourt. Atlantis just a few hundred feet off the deck. Main gear touchdown. The drag chute being deployed by pilot Charlie Precourt, and nose gear touchdown. Atlantis rolling out on runway 15 at the Kennedy Space Center to complete a 4.1 million mile mission and the first docking with the Russian space station Mir.
Houston, Atlantis, Kurt, we've got wheel stop.
Atlantis, Houston, we copy wheel stop, and welcome home, Atlantis. Welcome home, Mir 18. Congratulations on your perfect end to your historic mission. A new era in human spaceflight has begun.